Hello everyone, that Manga Kid here to do a discussion video on The Golden Sheep by Kaori Ozaki. This is a 3-volume vertical series. If you would like a spoiler-free review, please check out my actual review video of The Golden Sheep. But this will not be spoiler-free as I will be discussing in depth the entire kind of story. So, we start off. Our main character, Sugu, has lived in a small town growing up, and then as a young kid, probably 10 years old or so, she and her family moved away from the small town, but now she is in high school. She's probably 16 or 17, and she's moved back. Her mother, and I think she has 3 or 4 sisters, have all moved back to the small town, and she wants to reunite with her 3 other friends, Sora, Yushin, and Asari. They were super close as children, and when she moved away, they kind of lost touch because they were so young, but she connected with them before coming back and was like, hey, let's meet up again. And so she goes, and she hasn't changed much since she last saw them, and she meets up with everybody, and she's so excited because everybody else seems the same as when she left them, and she's just super stoked to be back, and she's kind of blindly happy. She doesn't notice the discomfort that the others are feeling, because she's just so stoked to be back and excited that they're all going to be at the same school, and we find out that Yushin is brutally bullying Sora, and that Asari is kind of, not so happy with Sugu. She's immediately jealous because Sugu comes back and is really close to Yushin, who she has a crush on, and she just feels like Sugu is a threat to her, and so we watch very quickly Sugu starting to realize that Sora's being bullied, and then she starts to get an inkling that it is Yushin who is responsible for it, and she's immediately shunned by Asari and her friends. She starts getting bullied as well, and she's just trying to keep a positive attitude. And so when she finally does have a conversation with Sora kind of tells her what's been going on, and in middle school we find out, Yushin, who was super top of the class, really involved in everything, super positive, always was saving people from being bullied and all that kind of stuff. We find out his father, who is a politician, was arrested for underage prostitution, child prostitution charges, and it kind of ruined his life. And so he lost faith in somebody he trusted and loved really a lot, his father, and his life sort of went downhill. And so we see, these flashbacks of Yushin and Sora, and how Sora didn't really stand up for or protect Yushin in those moments because he really just didn't know how. And how that backfired because when Yushin started bullying Sora felt as though he deserved it for not having Yushin's back at the time that he really needed him. And so, lo and behold, Sugu and Sora decide to run away. They go to Tokyo, and we find out that Sugu's father is a musician in Tokyo. He is not dead, as we had been led to believe. And so her father is like, you can't stay with me. I don't live in a place that's, good for you two, but go to this address, which is a croquette shop, and stay with the guy there will take care of you. And we know that this man is, or we find out later that this man who owns the croquette shop is actually Sugu's grandfather, her dad's dad, who is estranged from him basically because he just didn't approve, I guess, of his musician lifestyle. He didn't really approve of his life choices. And so, but we find that out later. And Sugu kind of catches on pretty quickly that this man is her grandfather because she finds a bunch of her dad's old tapes and things. So she's, this is my father's name on this thing. You must be my grandfather. And he doesn't want to admit that. He's changing the subject. But what I really liked about this series is this arc where they are in Tokyo working at this croquette shop, not going to school, clearly, and just trying to find themselves and get their feet underneath them because, Sora especially, but even Sugu, like she just kind of was, her life was just kind of thrown into chaos. Everything she thought she knew about these people she cared about and had had such fond memories of was just turned on its head, and she just didn't know what to do, and she wanted to protect Sora, who was clearly in a lot of physical and emotional pain, and just like went, you know what, let's just go, let's get out of here. And so Sugu's father calls her mother, to be like, hey, Sugu and this boy are in Tokyo. I sent them to my father's house. They're fine, but like, just so you know. And her mom is losing it. She's like, oh my God, like, what do we do? So she goes to apologize to Sora's grandmother, his guardian, that her daughters dragged their son into this thing, and, or grandson, I guess. And the grandma's like, they're going to go find themselves. We know they're safe. Let them be. They're going to go for however long they need to, and eventually they'll come back. And she's like, but what about school? And the grandma's like, don't worry about it. Like, they need this moment. Let's just let them find themselves. And I thought that was such a powerful thing because, a lot of times adults are like, I know what's best. I know what's best because I'm an adult and I know more than you. And yes, you've lived longer and sometimes you do know better. But there are also times when somebody is hurting so bad that they just need some space. And I love that his grandmother was like, this kid is hurting so bad and he needs space and he needs to go and find something that brings him joy. And he needs to be in a place where he doesn't feel like he is constantly under attack. And I like that she just trusts him. She knows that he will make good decisions, and she goes, let's just let them be. And it's such a good moment, and it's really, really lovely, because he was ready to die. Like, he was ready to kill himself, and we kind of see the effect that their decision is having on Yushin in particular, because he's upset now. His punching bag has left. He has no way to get his anger out. He's been boxing, and he now wants to be a professional boxer. He wants to quit school and do that. And his coach is like, well, I mean, you're not very good yet. You need to train. We find out, to take this exam, he has to go to Tokyo, and he'd need parental permission because he's a minor, to take this exam. And we find out that his father actually signed off on this exam for him and also has been paying all his gym fees all this time. And so we see, the coach being like, this guy is doing everything for you. And I think it's an interesting conversation because obviously Yushin is uncomfortable because his father did something really gross that ruined the family entirely. His decisions ruined their family, their reputation, their prospects, their family just in general, their dynamic. His father obviously doesn't live with them anymore or speak to them, but you see him say hello to Yushin in town sometimes, and Yushin completely ignores him. And it's an interesting conversation about, when you have someone in your life who makes a really horrible decision, or does something really horrible, it's not a light switch that can just be, your love just doesn't turn off. And especially for a kid he was probably 13 or something at the time when his father was arrested, for this kid to see the world, or, the town and the news and everything, discussing his father in a way that is horrible because he did something horrible. How, as a child, how do you reconcile your love for this person, your respect for this person, with now the world being like, no, this is a bad person. We hate this person. And now as a kid being like, yeah, we hate this person, but he's also our dad. And And I think that, the story doesn't go into it too much because it's only 3 volumes, but like, I think it plants the seeds for a really interesting discussion about forgiveness, and, reconciliation and that kind of stuff. Because at what point are you allowed to forgive somebody? Um, at what point are you allowed to say, what you did was horrible, but you are my dad, and how do we move forward from this? And I think that it's just a really interesting discussion to have, I think. So then we see that Sora and Tsugu are really, really thriving. They're making the croquettes. They brought this shop back to life, and the grandfather's so happy to have them in this tiny space. Yushin goes to Tokyo for his exam, and he fails. Like, he gets disqualified because he just gets the shit beaten out of him. And so, he's pissed. Sora and Tsugu had gone to actually watch this thing, which he was not happy about, Yushin. And then we see that Yushin sees a cat stuck in the drain, and he saves it. And they're like, aw, good old Yushin. That's what you used to do. You'd save animals and, people who were getting hurt. And so he saves this cat, and it's kind of this moment of, they say, like, Yushin never changes. Like, he's still in there. That really sweet, heroic kid still exists in there. And, just because all these horrible things have happened doesn't mean that you can't find yourself again. And so volume 3 starts off, and we've got the 3 of them kind of hanging out at the grandfather's house. And we have Asari, this is a flashback, but we have Asari kind of not sure what to do. She's like, Yushin's left school, the other 2 have left, they're not even in the city or the town anymore. Like, what do I do? She goes to the golden sheep in town to dig up the time capsule that the other 3 buried like 6 or something years ago, because she felt left out, that she wasn't a part of it. She was sick in the hospital at the time, and she finds out, she digs it up out of spite so their wishes won't come true. And she finds that their wish was for that her Asari would get better because she was sick at the time, as I mentioned. And so she feels like an ass. She's like, oh no, these people who just loved and cared about me, I've now treated them like crap, and I've been jealous unnecessarily. And we just see like all of these characters kind of coming to a head here, all of them kind of acknowledging their baggage between each other. And it just, Yushin goes back to school. He stands up for Asari, who is now being bullied by the friends that she bullied Tsugu with. And everything just kind of falls back into place. And then we see Tsugu and Sora being like, I think it's probably time that we should go home. It just, they all go back and they meet under the golden sheep, and Asari just says, thank you. Your wish came true. I did actually get better, and I'm sorry I dug up the time capsule. And we see the old guy, the grandfather, keeps the little kitty that Yushin saved. And so now he's got a buddy. And it's just really sweet. And I understand people's kind of trepidation with this series of like, it was so fast and there wasn't really, it didn't really go into everything as it could have, and it didn't wrap up. Like it just kind of comes to a really nice packaged resolution, I guess, of like all these people who were having really, really deep conflict with each other all of a sudden are okay again. But honestly, I think that it doesn't end with them all being like buddy again. It just ends with them all kind of being acknowledging that they were close as children and that they don't have to be enemies now. They can literally just exist in the same world and be, okay with that, knowing that there were people in your life at one point that were very important to you and that they helped each other kind of recenter focus. There was a lot of pain between them, and just in general in their own personal lives. And in this moment now, as teenagers, they've come together and they've kind of recentered each other. And now they can just move forward. And obviously, like, Sugu and Sora get along really well, and they will probably stay friends and be connected. And potentially Yushin and Asari as well. But, like, I think that there's something powerful about that, and I think there's something so sweet about that, and I just don't think it has to be deeper than that for a 3-volume series. And we have this moment of, like, them all holding the strings, and then we see them as kids, and it just kind of ends. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that, sometimes it's okay to just kind of reconcile, but know that you will never be that close again. They're never going to be the friends that they were when they were children. That's just not going to happen. But you can still get over the petty teenage drama and just kind of be like, okay, yeah. And honestly, that happens with kids, right? Like, I had a friend in, like, growing up. We met when we were about 10 years old. We went to the same, like, we graduated grade 8, and went to separate schools for high school, and lost touch for a bit. And then I ended up moving to the high school that she went to, and she was the only person I knew there. So we hung out a little bit, but we were just different at that point, and I was ready to not be around her. And so I put distance because I just wasn't interested in being around her or her friends at that point. We were very different people. And, that went on for 3 years. 3 years of high school, we hardly even looked at each other. We just ran in different circles and didn't see each other. And then the final semester of grade 12, we had a class together. And all of a sudden, everything awkward and weird that had happened just didn't matter. And all of a sudden, like, we were back to the way that we had been. And we had a really, really great semester where we just kind of rekindled that friendship. And it was really nice. And then we graduated, and that was it. Like, I haven't seen her since then. But that moment of just, like, acknowledging that this person knows a lot more about me, about my history, than anybody else in this entire building. We just didn't care anymore. We were going to move on. We're all going to go to, well, she went to university, but, like, and I went to work, but, like, we were going in different directions. And in that moment, those, like, 4 months, that final semester, any crap that had happened didn't matter anymore. And I see that happen, like, trivial crap that just goes on, rivalries and jealousy and whatever. By the time you're finishing up high school, it really doesn't matter anymore. Everybody is just happy to be leaving and happy to be, in this stage of this transitional stage of their life where they're like, yes, anything that happened doesn't even matter anymore. We can just be friendly or pleasant with each other and move on. And I think that's fine. I just don't see a problem with it, though I do understand how some people would be frustrated with that kind of resolution of, like, they were all so mad at each other and then all of a sudden they're just fine, like, I guess. But anyway, the other thing that this has, the final volume has a short story about this long, about this spirit, and he's talking to God and the angels, and they get to choose who they're going to be born as. And this little spirit chooses this teenager who is clearly pregnant, and he's like, I want her to be my mom. Turns out, things don't go very well, and she she ends up neglecting him to the point where he dies at a very young age, probably like 3 or 4 years old. And so he goes back up to heaven to choose a new thing to be born as. And it's just a really, really beautiful, heartbreaking story about this little spirit who keeps choosing ways to be near this woman. And so he gets revived as a cat, then he's reborn as like a flower in a field that she passes through, and then, you know, it's just all of these moments of him being like, this woman, this girl, I love her, she's my mom, and the angels are like, she killed you, she neglected you till you died, and he's like, but she's my mom and I love her and I want to be near her in whatever way possible. And so, you know, it's just so beautiful and very sad. And it's lovely. And a lot of people are like, that short story is better than this entire story put together. And honestly, I mean, it's a lovely short story. But I also really enjoy The Golden Sheep. If I know I missed parts of this series that are probably notable as well. So if you want to discuss this series in the comments, go right ahead. But yeah, it's I really like The Golden Sheep. My favorite part is when Sugu and Sora go to Tokyo. I just think that it's so, like, obviously it's not the way that teen runaway stories typically happen, but because it's so positive and things work out for them. But like, I don't mind the kind of flippantness of it, of like, they ran away and now all of a sudden they have a place to stay and a job and they're good. But I just like the reset of it. I wasn't expecting it at all, for them to leave town. Like, it just was so out of left field, that I really enjoyed it. I thought it was refreshing. And then I liked the relationship with the grandfather and how he was just like, yeah, I got these kids and I'm going to use them to revitalize my business. And they're bringing customers back. And it's just a story about people, the teenagers and the grandfather and the father and all of these adults as well. You know, how them all coming in contact with each other just kind of resets their outlook on life. And they now have something to live for and to look forward to. Because when they leave Tokyo, the grandfather's like, I got my business and now I got this cat and I'm, you know, ready to take on the world and be excited about it again. And, you know, all the kids, like I said, they all kind of get over their BS drama and just move on. And they're ready to find something they're passionate about. And like Sora being like, maybe I want to be a chef. Like, I had so much fun making new recipes at the croquette shop. Like, maybe I want to go to school to be a chef. And I just think that's so cool. I love when people kind of find something they're passionate about. And it doesn't have to be something you've wanted to do forever, but it can be something that you stumble into. And in this case, he stumbled into this job at this croquette shop. And now he realizes he has a passion and a talent for, you know, cooking or baking or whatever. And he wants to explore that further. And I just love it. Anyway, thank you for watching if you've watched this far. If you read The Golden Sheep and you'd like to discuss, as I said, feel free in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Especially from folks who actually really did enjoy this series like I did, because I feel like a lot of people have more critical than positive things to say about it, and that's fair. And I've not heard a criticism that I disagree with fundamentally, but I just loved it so much I'm willing to forgive all of its faults. But yeah, I enjoyed the reread. I will enjoy rereading this numerous times in the future. It's a very fast read, so, you know, it's one that's a nice short thing to kind of pick up and enjoy. But anyway, thanks for watching.